On today's show, who is the best lead player in the Western Conference? Yes, we're going Oscar baiting on today's Locked On NBA Squad Show West.
You are talking ball with the NBA West Squad Show. From the Warriors to the Lakers, the Mavericks to the Nuggets, and everyone else in the West, the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network bring you all the scoops, breakdowns, and the most comprehensive look at the Western Conference. Trash talk and big takes included. No holding back, we're giving the green light. It's time to talk NBA West.
And welcome, you're Locked On NBA Squad Show West. My name is Nick Angstead, host of the Locked On Mavericks podcast. This is the Squad Show where we take over the feed of your favorite Locked On show, and it's an open invite for any host to join to talk about anything they want in the NBA's Western Conference. Joining me today at the top of the conference from Locked On Thunder, Rylan Stiles. The next top is Andy Kamenetsky from Locked On Lakers. Then it's Matt Moore of Locked On Nuggets. Then there's nobody from the Grizzlies. Sorry, Grizzlies. But then there's Locked On Rockets, Jackson Gatlin. So we got 4 of the top 5 represented here, and then one that should be up there, and then did something, and that's me. Today's episode, we will probably end up somewhere completely different, but we're going to start with doing some of our awards. We just saw the Oscars this weekend, and let's do some awards for the Western Conference, starting with Best Lead Player. Best Lead Player. It's not Best Player. It's not like who is the best player. It is who the best lead player. What's the best story? What's the best lead player? And I'll open it up to start making your cases for your players, which I can't believe I can't make a case for a player right now.
I mean,
you want to make a case for Kyrie Irving as the best lead player for the Mavericks? Come on, Nick.
Listen, they've been missing the AD and Luka spot for 38 games, and they're still in a fighting spot for the 60. No, I'm just kidding.
Rylan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that Shai deserves a lot of the credit
surprise.
here.
Shocker.
It's a shocking revelation that Shai should be the leading member of the cast, because it's just, look at his on-off numbers. Look how historic the Thunder are when he's actually on the floor. He's excellent. He leads the league in scoring. He's just an overall presence that helps the Thunder not only score individually, but he sets guys up very well. He just does everything at the head of the snake, and the Thunder would not be here without Shai. So,
I mean, he doesn't do. Let's not say he does everything. Like, I think your case is really good for the MVP. If you're just like, hey, because I think that's going to be like the case I make for Shai down the stretch. Is I'm just going to be like, look, they win more when he's on the court. When he's on the court, they beat everybody by more than when anybody else is on the floor, and that needs to matter.
yeah.
But come on,
He shot 42% from 3 last month. He's a 3-level scorer.
If we're going to move past the MVP thing, 29, 13, and 10, Jokic is shooting 44% from 3-point range. He's shooting, I think he's still shooting. Yep. He's shooting 62% from 2-point range. You talk about like, oh, he does everything. There is nobody that does anything close to what Jokic does every single night. Now, I think Shai's a much better defender. Again, I think that goes into the MVP conversation. I'm totally fine with Shai being MVP, but come on. We know that this is Jokic.
In the spirit of this conversation being centered around the Oscar awards and who the best leading man is here for the Western Conference, I think I have to lean, even though I follow Matt's argument and I'm kind of in the same boat. I think this year is like SGA's MVP to lose at this point, with kind of the narrative, where the Thunder are headed, all that stuff. But as far as who does the most on a nightly basis, who's carrying their production on a nightly basis the most, it's got to go to Jokic. That to me is an absolute no-brainer decision here.
Well, the other thing here is like, go ahead, Andy.
Real quick, are we making the case? I just want to make sure before I start thinking about my own roster. This is the case for the Western Conference, not your specific team. Not that it would be crazy to hear Matt make his case for Nikola or Rylan make his case for Shai. I just want to make sure that I'm following the exercise correctly. It's for the entire Western Conference.
Do I have to play the intro again? This is the Squad Show.
You are talking ball with.
I just want to make sure sometimes, let's be honest, this show just becomes an exercise in people caping up for their squad, and that's fine. I just want to make sure
in the Eastern Conference, a host compared their team to Madam Web. So it's not happening over in the East.
Yeah, but that's not a real conference. That's not a real conference, Nick. I'm talking about an actual conference.
Fair.
I think the movie comparison actually is really great here, right? Where Jokic is like the best actor. Or like what's the category that we're doing here? Best
Here's
lead
what I would
actor.
say when you were talking about
right?
like leading man. Like Nikola is right now the guy that you feel like can elevate any material. Like even if it's a bad script, Nikola Jokic is so talented that he will make that bad script at the very least watchable. Shai may be having the more just brilliant year as an actor. Like you watch him as an actor with his craft and you're like, wow, like what he's doing this year is unbelievable. But he may be working with a better script in the projects that are blowing your mind, as opposed to someone like Nikola Jokic, who you put him in anything, he'll always be watchable.
I'll argue against it, though, because I think Rylan would have a good point where he says, what's changed from the 2023 team that won a title? All of a sudden, the Thunder have this way better roster. The Nuggets still have basically the same starting five, and Christian Brown's been better than KCP this year. So, like, from that perspective, I think you could actually say that the cast around Nikola maybe has been better, and the movie hasn't been as good.
Well, either way is elevating better material, a bad material. Either way, I mean, it's a bad story, but you're watching it because of Nikola.
But I don't think that we'd view this Thunder roster without Shai as talented as we view it with Shai. I think that he is elevating.
You're winning with defense, though. You know that. You know, you're
for sure, but you gotta. I mean, if you take away Shai's offense and what he does for the other players around him offensively, you turn into the Houston Rockets, and we've seen what the Rockets are trying to win with defense and not a top scorer.
Who cares about that? It's about what you do on the floor. It's not about what's off the floor. It's about what you do when you're on. It's not. We don't judge a performance based off of the scenes without this guy sucked. We don't do that, right?
Actually, sometimes I do when I watch a movie.
I'm like, man,
it's just bring that guy back.
See, I'm that way with Matt Damon. We're like, anytime Matt Damon's not on the screen, I'm asking, where's Matt Damon? That's how
I mean, sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, I didn't realize how little this was being held together until this actor or this actress left. And then all of a sudden you realize this is not very good.
And that guy knows something about Hollywood. That's for sure.
It's a two-person race, though. It's Jokic.
Is there anyone else?
There isn't. There's literally not a single other player that even comes close to those two right now.
And like at the rate that both players are playing, you're really just splitting hairs of like, I think that Jokic is a better player, so you can give it to Jokic, and I'd be comfortable with that.
You know what? It's going to be wild when the Academy swoops in and gives LeBron a legacy award there you go.
Is it LeBron? They're number 2
He's
in the West right now.
He's never asked to be the leading actor or the face of the league, so we can't give it to him.
Wow. Fair. Andy, let's talk about the face of the league for the next 10 minutes.
Which one, LeBron or Luka? They both play for my team.
Oh, now he's the face of the league? Now he's allowed to be the face of the league? Oh, great. Awesome. Let's do best supporting actor. Who's the best, let's do this as who's the best player that is maybe not the second best player, but the best role player in the Western Conference?
This is a good question. This is a really good question.
I would go with options.
You thought Jazz have a whole team of role players, so they might be in this conversation the most.
It should be Jaren, right? But it's not because he's been their best player.
I was wondering if Jaren Jackson should be he got the nominee for a movie that's not as good as all the other Oscar nom movies, and you're like, man, he just deserves a spot up there because he's been their best player. But
and I think I'm not kidding here. I think it's Amen Thompson. I really do. I think it's Amen Thompson has been the best supporting player this season. Every time I watch him, I am I go through these clip sequences where it's just block, transition, layup, assist, nifty layup move, makes an open corner 3, steal, deflection. It's so compact what he does every single possession in his second year. He's going to be an absolute superstar. A great question is who do you want for the next 5 years? Do you want J-Dub or do you want Amen Thompson? I love that debate.
Honestly, at this point, Amen Thompson, his impact on a permanent basis has been off the charts this season, and he's just getting exponentially better as the season goes on. It's been a bit of a weird dynamic recently, though, with him being thrown into the starting lineup and suddenly shouldering a lot more responsibility as far as playmaking in the absence of Fred VanVleet, not necessarily being able to exert as much intensity and intentionality on the defensive side of the court because he's not playing that kind of pseudo sub role coming off the bench where he was kind of artificially capped at 30 to 34, 35 minutes a night. And so he's kind of learning how to, readjust as a starter. And unfortunately, the Rockets starting lineup with him in the starting lineup has actually been atrocious this season. And that's because they're sorely missing Jabari Smith Jr. They got to figure some stuff out because right now they're kind of dealing with the politics of Dillon Brooks is still starting, but Jabari should be starting over Dillon Brooks.
How can he be a role player when he's your best player?
He's not the best player yet. He's very close though. But in the confines of the Rockets structure,
taking all the possessions.
In the structure of the Rockets' current dynamic, he is in that role player role. He is an ancillary piece. He is a complementary piece to both Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. We can argue until we're purple in the face whether that's how he should be deployed this season or at all, but that's what the Rockets are doing with him right now.
Coming up, who else should be a nominee for Best Supporting Player? What about Best Special Effects? Who's a team you don't believe in that are all smoke and mirrors? Talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Squad Show West is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, if you think Shai or Jokic or anybody is going to get 50 points in a game and the next day they do, you can go get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from DoorDash. You have to be a Dash Pass member to get it. And if any player, doesn't matter if it's the best player, doesn't matter if it's a supporting player, doesn't matter if Amin Thompson does with 50 free throws, 50% off an order with $10 off, up to $10 off the next day. Check it out from DoorDash. You can take advantage of this in any kind of scenario. Think about all the ways that you could use DoorDash. There's many of them. Keep thinking. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save when any player scores 50 or more in a game. Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Use the promo code NBA50. That's the letters NBA, the numbers 50 from noon to midnight. After a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants, must have an active Dash Pass account. Team terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA Squad Show West. We have a daily show that covers your favorite team. Check the link in the description to find Locked On Thunder, Locked On Nuggets, Locked On Rockets, Locked On Lakers, and from the headman himself, Locked On Jazz, David Locke. Who's the best supporting player right now in the Western Conference?
That's a really good question. Immediate thought as I go to teams that are better than why are they better than we think, right? Does that make sense? So, I mean, that kind of gets to Memphis probably first, or the Clippers. I don't know if Norman Powell counts as a supporting player, but if I had to go somewhere there, I would probably go I don't think any of us expected the Clippers to be 32-28 and 6th in the West. So I would probably go Norman Powell, or maybe Zubac is much better than we think he is on that team. So those would be the two names that jump there. There's something going on in Memphis. I don't entirely know what it is. It might be systematic, and that might be my special effects claim here in a few minutes, so I'll hold to that.
I think Ivica Zubac is actually a really good call for this category because he's between James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, even Norm Powell, who was in screaming distance, even whispering distance of an all-star nod this year. I would have loved to seen him on the team. And I think Zubac gets overlooked, between the lack of star power to his name, the fact that he's just sort of been there for a long time. He doesn't have a particularly flashy style. He is really, really good for them, especially this season. He's been terrific.
Can I lob out one more name here really quick? What about Austin Reeves? Any thoughts on Austin Reeves here? He's consistently playing third. He's consistently playing third banana to LeBron, AD. Now, third banana to Luka in that dynamic. But this Lakers team doesn't have the success that they're having without Austin Reeves. I think he would be a great candidate.
I wouldn't include Austin here because at the very least, Lakers are trying to convince you that there's a big three happening. They will not take pictures of LeBron and Luka without throwing Austin in there. So it goes against their own messaging. If you were to look for a Laker for this, I'd say the answer is Dorian Finney-Smith. And he has been a plus minus advanced numbers god for this team since arriving. I'm not saying he should be the answer. I'm saying that would be the better answer from the Lakers.
Rui's been so good though since they got rid of the anchor that is Anthony Davis. He's been really good. That's actually worked out really great for them. I think Rui's been phenomenal this season.
Rui's been very good. He's had a very good season.
Is it Chet or Jalen? I honestly think the answer here is the Thunder defense. It's just your phalanx of endless defenders.
Yeah, it's like a team award. It's like whenever the Hawks got the player of the week with all their guys. The Thunder's defense is the backbone of everything that's made them so great this season, of everything that's made them title contenders this season. And take your pick of whoever their co-star is, Jalen or Chet, who I think is better, just hasn't gotten to play a ton this year because of the injury. And they have a complement of role players as well. that help him out, like Wiggins and Joe and Kaysen, and the list goes on. So I think the Thunder have a really good, argument to have whoever you think their second best player is being the outcome here.
We have
following Andy's thing where you just take up for your team in the squad shows. That's what it becomes. The answer for the Mavericks is PJ Washington. He's been so important to their team. Yeah. He's stepped up when Kyrie's been out, when they had a top 5 player at one point, and then he was out for some games. He stepped up in that way. He's scored a lot more this year. His defense is super important for them. His rebounding, and they're 3-1 against the best team in the West right now, and it's mostly because of PJ Washington, Rylan.
Well, it's interesting the teams that don't have one here in this conversation. Like, I don't think Sacramento has one because Keegan Murray hasn't stepped forward like they wanted to, which I think the Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter lack of supporting actor role forced them to go get DeMar DeRozan. I don't know if Denver has had the supporting actor that they've hoped out of either Strother or any of the younger, or Watson or any of the younger players they've wanted. It's interesting to me the teams that don't actually have that supporting actor this year that they probably want. Minnesota, I would say, probably has not had that supporting actor that they wanted out of their
Nas
group.
Reed has been incredible.
The worst isolation defender in the entire NBA, but he's incredible.
NAW has been so good for them.
Yeah, that's really good.
Jaden's been better since Randall went out, but I think NAW has been phenomenal. Trey Murphy, the third in New Orleans, deserves to go on this list for just being there and playing.
Actually, we talked about Memphis before. Jalen Wells, I think, he deserves a mention. He's been, beyond just having a good season, he's been way better than anything they expected.
Kamara in Portland, I would go with.
Yeah.
There's no one on the Warriors. There's no one on the Warriors. They're just held up by duct tape.
Speaking of being held up,
Walker Kessler, man. Walker Kessler has been awesome.
But he's our best player. How can he be our supporting actor?
That's sad.
Yikes. Speaking of holding up things in duct tape, best special effects. What team is being held up by CGI, smoke and mirrors? Which team do you not believe in? David, you've already kind of mentioned the Grizzlies here. Is that your answer?
Well, Memphis is just playing a different style than everybody else, which is great until someone faces it for 7 games in a row. And then it's not a different style because they understand it. And when I say they're playing a different style, let me just back it up so that it's not just they're in transition 25% of all possessions, which I just don't think is translatable at all once you get into the postseason. If they are, that's a game-changing thing. And so then you get into what their half-court offense is getting all of this buzz because they don't run picks, they do this, they do that. It's only 15th in the NBA in half-court offense. So I'm a little concerned when they get up in a series and that they're not playing against lesser teams or teams that don't have time to prepare for it or teams that don't have, that their difference is real. But I think that when you play a different style in an 82-game NBA, you have such a huge advantage. So I think there's a smoke in regular season, smoke and mirrors to Memphis right now.
They've also got, look, let's be honest, as great as Jalen Wells has been, as great as Zach Edey's been this season, they're starting 2 rookies. They've had 2 rookies, as a huge part of their rotation. That's going to be a huge shock to their system when they make it to the postseason for the first time and have to deal with a 7-game series and all that. And maybe they hold up great. Maybe they perform and they carry their excellent regular season performance into the postseason. They also don't take care of the basketball. They're second to last in the NBA in turnovers per game. And it feels like that is going to be Memphis's death knell, that they do not know how to take care of the basketball. And to David's point, things are going to slow down in the playoffs and their half-court offense is not going to look great.
And if I could add, I know Matt's got some. I'll add one other thing that's interesting. I watched the final 7 minutes of every close game in the NBA. The minute they get to a close game, they start playing pick and roll. They change absolutely how they play. And the final 7 minutes of a close game is representative of what the 48 minutes of a playoff game is. Sorry, Matt.
No, you're okay. So I'll defend them a little bit here. I had a big, long argument with a scout that feels the exact same way David does a couple weeks ago. And he was just like, they're playing too fast. It's not going to translate. Warriors kind of proved in 2015 you can do this. Now they had Steph Curry. I get it. I'm just saying that there has been teams that have run fast. And the other thing is, if you're facing OKC, do you know what OKC hates? Hates getting sped up. It drives them nuts. They get all out of kilter, and it's one of the only things that actually messes with the incredible job that Shai does at controlling the pace. If you speed them up, they get a little frantic because they're still a little bit young. That 15th in offense, I think, is good enough when you look at the fact that they're built a little bit like Minnesota. They're like fast Minnesota is kind of how you need to think of it. And they've got a lot of, I think, upside in terms of how they can develop. They've also got optionality with the rookies. They've got the ability to not play those guys and go to different kind of options. I'm not saying that Memphis is going to make a finals run. I'm not saying they're going to make a Western Conference finals run. I think all of these teams are flawed, and I think Memphis is among those flawed teams, but they're also really good in some areas.
Can I quibble with one thing there? From 2015 to 2020, or maybe 2019, Golden State's half-court offense was number one in the NBA every year.
Yep, I hear you. So, I mean, the question is just like, there's no Golden State this year. So it's like, it's more a matter of,
Wait, why is Oklahoma City not Golden State? They're 73-2.
That's going to be the argument. I get it.
Who else is being held up by smoke and mirrors? We'll make some more nominations, talk about some more awards and more coming up. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Squad Show West is brought to you by Open Phone. Running a small business means that you're wearing a lot of hats. You're trying to do everything. You're Nikola Jokic. You're passing, you're rebounding, you're doing all kinds of stuff. You're juggling personal calls, business calls, and all that. And when you do that all day, it becomes tiresome and it becomes impossible to manage everything. That's where Open Phone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help keep your work and personal life separate for only $15 a month. You can get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business on just a phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or your computer and integrates tools like HubSpot and different things like that. He also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, gives you a rundown of your action items the second you hang up so you don't miss anything. No problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's OpenPhone, openphone.com/lockedonnba for 20% off 6 months. 6 months is a long time. Openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have an existing number with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. All right, we're here in Locked On NBA Squad Show West. We've got the host of the Western Conference teams. A lot of the teams at the top, and then we have the Utah Jazz and the Dallas Mavericks, who are in completely different places and weird places right here. We're talking about the team that is the best special effects, team that's being held up by smoke and mirrors. I think my answer to this, before the last couple of weeks, I guess, would have been the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
Because they were up there 2-3 in the West for a long time, and they have the worst half-court offense in the Western Conference. Worse than the Utah Jazz, worse than the Clippers, worse than the Portland Trailblazers. And I think that I'm interested to see how that team plays in the playoffs. But they've kind of proven me right the last couple of weeks, Jackson, having the problems that you just mentioned earlier.
Well, the biggest issue for the Rockets is they lost kind of what was their backbone of their defense. And as good as Thompson's been this year, as great as Tari Eason has been, and that kind of dynamic duo coming off the bench, the Terror Twins, all that was a big part of their identity. But I think even myself included kind of underrated the importance of Jabari Smith Jr. with this Rockets lineup. And as soon as he went down due to injury, they had a strong January because Jalen Green was playing out of his mind, and they really took it to the Cavs, the Celtics. They had some good games, some great wins there. But then things started to kind of come off the rails a little bit because they didn't have the defense, the positional versatility, the rebounding, the length that Jabari Smith Jr. provides, the rim. He's grown into a really strong rim deterrent, playing next to Alperen Şengün. And so I hate chalking things up to, they got injured, right? They lost Jabari, they lost Tari Eason for like 13 games. They lost Fred VanVleet early in February, and he didn't get him back until last game, and now he's probably going to miss some more significant amount of time because he re-aggravated that ankle injury. The Rockets are like, if you have like links in a chain, right? They're greater than the sum of their parts. And the moment you start taking out one or two or three of those links in the chain, they're just not the same thing. They're not the same team anymore. They're just inherently a weaker product. And that's kind of what happened. And now you've got Ime Udoka toying with the starting lineup. He wants to keep Amin Thompson in the starting lineup instead of Jabari Smith Jr. That may or may not be the right decision. We haven't seen this team healthy in over 2 months now. And that's a big part of the fall off that did happen. However, I do have my reservations and concerns about whether or not they can keep up that same level of defensive intensity, because Ime just preaches you outwork, you out physical, out hustle your opponents every single night. Feels like there's maybe just some diminishing returns on that, where when other teams actually stop playing at 80, 90%, start playing at 100%, they can catch up to where the Rockets have their kind of margin for victory.
Any other nominees? Best special effects?
Denver Nuggets.
Ooh.
14-16 versus teams over 500. They've got losses to Oklahoma City. They've got losses to Dallas. They've got losses back when the Dallas Mavericks had Luka Doncic.
Hold on.
They've got losses to the Houston Rockets.
It's an insult now.
They've got losses to the Los Angeles Lakers. They've got losses to the Boston Celtics. They got smacked by the Cleveland Cavaliers in both matchup. Their home record isn't good. There are all sorts of red flags that basically suggest that the Denver Nuggets are just simply not that good. I've maintained optimism over at Locked On Nuggets based on the idea that, like, look, you don't need to be the best team. You just need to win the 3 series in front of you and you're in the finals. And I still think that with Nikola Jokic, you still have a strong possibility of doing that. But if we're looking at the records and we're actually like, if we look at I always call it like win profile, the win profile for Denver is extremely suspect compared to a team like the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm sucking up to the Lakers.
He just went in on his own team to suck up to the Lakers.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would have gone
Pretty
yesterday.
soon the rest of the league's going to just get on board, Matt. Just bow down before the team that gets all the treasures one way or the other.
I'm going to open myself. Jokic is going to look awful in Lakers yellow. I just want to point that out.
Horrible. They got to go to the gold, right? That's what everybody's asking for. I'm going to open myself up here. If you're in charge of nominating the Mavericks for either the comedy or the drama category, who do you nominate? Where do you nominate them?
Well, I mean, the saying is just that comedy.
Wait, did you have tragedy as one of those categories?
Yeah, it's not tragedy is not an Oscar category, so I went with.
Well, the saying is just that comedy is tragedy plus time, so it really can be both. Like it is evolving from one or the other, or there's one comedic origin that eventually turns tragic, or tragic turns comic. But the point being, Nick, you can have it both ways. It can be either one.
No, I can't. Luka's not on the team anymore, Andy. I can't have it anyway.
No. I mean, the disaster can be comedic or tragic, is what I'm saying. Don't limit yourself.
We should have nominated Nico Harrison for best leading man because he's clearly the leading man in his own head of how the Mavericks work.
I'm looking for it. It's weird. They don't have a best catering category. I can't find it.
Well, that cake the other day for Luka's birthday, he was he was eyeing that, but he was not going to touch that for sure. It was like Zion answered that question about Thanksgiving last year, and he was like, I can't answer that.
Maverick should have been nominated for best. Look, Mav should have been nominated for best special effects just based off the Luka video alone, where they scrubbed him and green screened him out of the video and put the logo over his face. Right, that alone should have won them best special effects.
The Mavs didn't even make that video. The artist Duro, he does that song Ice Cream Paint Job. His team made that video, sent it to the Mavericks, and the Mavs posted it. And then they got all the flack for it. The Mavs are probably a good example of best special effects because they're above 500. They have a puncher's chance at 6th, and they've missed all their guys for so long. Obviously, the Luka trade was insane.
And they made their fan base disappear. So that's
they're CGIing people into the stands. I'm there physically. There's not that many people there.
They have to do a lot of sound editing.
I'm still upset about this whole idea that Denver's not a challenger anymore, which means that only the Lakers and Thunder are the challengers in the West, and that
somebody's going to make a run. I think
terrible realization.
I feel like somebody's going to make a run, whether it's the Warriors or the. Actually, you know what? I still really like the Wolves under the hood. Like I look at that team. Their 3-point rate is really high. Their half-court defense is really great. Most of their problems in terms of their offense are things that will work better in the playoff setting. We saw that last year. I kind of think the Wolves are sneaky dangerous. I think they're a team that could actually make a surprise run.
It's an interesting question. I don't even know if any of us can actually answer it, but you saying, Matt, that you like the look under the hood for the Wolves, I wonder how much they like the look under the hood. You know what I mean? Like, because they have seemed in a weird space all season. The vibes coming out of that franchise are weird. It's like, do they not see what you see?
Yeah. I mean, I think there is part of that. I think that this is kind of the question is like, can you make a run if you're internally unhappy? Like if things are not copacetic, if things are not all fun.
Nico Harrison would say, yes, you can.
If you're doing
the Lakers did it for the first half of the 2000s, but the difference is they were so talented that, you know, when you've got prime Kobe and prime Shaq, you can make a lot of things work, including the two of them despising each other. But, you know, that's a really high bar to reach.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not always going to be cute and copacetic, and you're doing like little interviews with all the team on the sidelines after the game, all fun and doing.
Who does that?
Commercials. Yeah. Sometimes there's going to be like grown men disagreeing, and that's okay. I think they can still make a run. I think it's possible, but the question is just like, you want to know the nasty part of this is just like what happens when Julius Randle comes back. That's kind of the question is like,
can they sneak him coming off the bench? Can he just be like, you know what, let's ease him in? And
I wish, I think it would help.
Yeah.
I honestly think it would help both sides. I think Nas has been great as a starter. I think it would help them.
Problem is
Jaden-
they haven't been winning enough that you can even make that argument.
Matchup wise, though, they are better without Randall. Like for the biggest matchups in the West, like I think that they're better facing the Thunder with Nas and not Randall. But again, can you really sell that to him, and can you sell that to yourself even?
I just want to point out we got
Mike Conley does not look anywhere near Mike Conley of 3 years ago. And I think that means that now Nickeil Walker or Dante DiVincenzo has to play point guard late in that. I know Ant's gonna have the ball most of the time, but I still think this could be an issue.
I think Nickeil's been so good. They got to solve there, and Finch has been. I will say Finch was really impressed me last year, where he walked into that Sun series when pretty much everybody was like, "Oh, they're toast."
And then he didn't really walk into it.
And then Finch was like, "Oh, how about if we just like don't do those things? Like, what if we actually play the right matchups?" And then the Suns like, "Oh God, hey Rylan,
yeah,
only a 6.23 net rating for Isaiah and Chet together. Your fan base is a little stressed out."
Yeah, I mean, the
Paradise?
double big stuff. The double big stuff is not going to be their fastball, I don't think. I think that they're still out there best with only one center, and then you can mix in two bigs whenever you have the matchup advantage to do so. But they just can't play the same level of defense where they can switch 1 through 5 when they have two bigs on the floor. They've got to rework their defensive identity in those lineups, and they haven't quite gotten there yet on a very small sample size. But I think ultimately they will just stick with Hartenstein coming off the bench as he did the last time those two guys were healthy, which was Friday. And you roll with Case and Wallace in the starting 5, and you're easily going to stagger those two bigs, and then you can bring them in at times throughout games.
The best script is going to be the Mavs somehow get to the 8th seed. They face the Thunder. They're healthy. They have AD and Lively and Gafford and PJ Washington, and they're massive against the team. The Thunder, their weakness is going to be playing those two bigs. And then they'll make it back to the finals.
Shai wins MVP like 07 Dirk. And
That's right. We're just running it back. It's all simulation. We're just running back old scripts. It's the reboot. They rebooted the We Believe Warriors into the Mavs.
I just want to highlight here. We got the Madam Web call out earlier, which I just want to take a stab in the dark because I know Nick was present, but nobody else was for that. I'm guessing that was in reference to the Charlotte Hornets.
It was not. It was the Orlando Magic.
Wow. What? Okay,
I
that's
know.
a shocker. I was going to say, who are we nominating to be Craven the Hunter of the Western Conference? Then, but
Is that the worst? The worst team?
Worst. Yeah. I mean, by standings, worst team is.
I think there are only 2 games. Or a game and a half ahead, and just vibes and just overall outlook, it's got to be the Pelicans this year.
It's the Suns. It's the Suns.
The Pelicans. Wow. Okay. Fair.
See, Madam Web does not work for Orlando because that would be like everyone got cholera on the set of Madam Web. Then you have the comparison to the Orlando Magic. But like, no, the Suns are definitely Craven the Hunter, where you're like, why is Bradley Beal wearing a rhino suit? Like, what is happening? Like all of these the Suns are. I still cannot figure out. Does anyone on this panel have any idea why the Suns are this bad?
Why did they make that trade for the 3 first-round picks? I'm still trying to figure out that from the deadline.
I think they're still trying to figure it out too.
That is one of the most irresponsible trades I've ever seen. Like when they made that trade, the 2031 pick to Utah, that they basically broke up into 3 worse picks. I was like, okay, clearly something is lined up. Like, apparently they just did it for hashtag reasons. Like, I mean, it was their
basketball
best
reasons
asset. It's crazy. Like, Matt Ishbia is a lunatic. He is a straight up, like, the way I describe him all the time is, you know how in Texas there are those steak houses that if you eat like an entire 96-ounce ribeye in an hour, you win like $300 and they give it to you for free. Matt Ishbia eats that 3 times a day. Like that's the only thing he eats. Like he has to eat the most alpha thing possible. Everything he does has to be the biggest display of alpha. He is an awful owner. He's terrible.
Vivek Ranadive recreated a bad Chicago Bulls team and looks like the patron saint of patience and reason.
I mean, he is a loon in Phoenix. He's just
and he's super happy that the Mavs made that dumbass trade because now they're not going to be talked about as much as the Mavericks the rest of the season.
I've asked this question. How many books do we think are going to be produced off of the trade? How many books? What's the over under?
Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, Tim McMahon has the addendum in his upcoming book.
He's got to add one to his book.
Which, by the way, he will be a guest upcoming on Locked On Lakers
and Locked On Mavs. We're still having him on.
Good. There's going to be at least a few. I mean, this type of trade never happens. Like, it truly never happens.
It's a great way to end the show. If you're listening on the Locked On Mavs feed and you made it here, wow, you must really love me. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA Squad Show West. We have a show that covers your favorite team. Check the link in the description. Got all kinds of great stuff. So stick with us. Subscribe wherever you're listening, watching this. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On NBA Squad Show West.